Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work. Hi, James.
Hello, what are we talking about today then?
Well, it's actually the second part of the episode that we did recently on values, where Dr. Values herself, Jackie Lefèvre, talked about individual values. This week, we've got her talking about organisational team values.
I'm looking forward to that because Jackie was very interesting, not us spouting our normal collection.
She was, and the episode was so good, we cut it into two. So now you can enjoy part two.
And if you haven't heard the first one, you really should go back and listen to it. We published it a couple of weeks ago. It's called Understanding Your Values.
Let's get on with it.
So, Jackie, a lot of us come across values in organisations, and organisations talk about they all have a value set. Interested in your take, on the importance of those sort of corporate values, and then as a middle manager in an organisation who's leading a team of people, how can I think about values, my team's values, my organisation's values, to effectively improve my performance or my team's performance or enjoyment of what they're doing?
Sure. So, as a middle manager or a frontline manager, your personal values will be actively shaping how you show up in that role.
Yeah.
If you know what they are, if you can put some words to them, you can start to use that in your explanation to your team about why you're doing what you're doing in the way that you're doing it. That helps them understand you better. One of the things that the values-based leadership literature suggests is that it's that kind of authenticity that really helps build those relationships, productive, effective relationships inside teams. If the manager is able to say, I have this really high priority value around workmanship, craft, derive a great deal of satisfaction from knowing I've done a quality job. So I know that when we get to the quarterly report planning, it could well feel like to everybody that I'm second guessing you or I'm asking you questions that I ought to know the answers to. It's not scrutiny. It's me wanting to be sure that when I report our work in our quarterly report, I have done it justice. That's why I ask questions of clarification. That's why I ask for the source material. It's not scrutiny. Yeah, because they may all be sat around the room going, well, don't see why I keep being asked this again and again and again, and feeling mistrusted.
Yeah.
And that's not what's going on. And if the manager, as a middle manager, if you've got a bit of a language to go, here is my drive for that, which I feel helps us in this way, more often than not, the team will go, oh, is that what it was? Oh, all right then. Yeah, fair enough.
Well, I think the difference is there in that example. If you were in that team, you'd think this person doesn't trust me. They don't trust what I'm doing. They don't value the quality of my work. And it's human nature, isn't it? We make stuff about ourselves. Whereas actually, if you're the manager of that team and you say, look, the reason why I'm doing this is X, Y, Z, and you make it explicit, then all of a sudden it becomes not just about them. So it depersonalizes that, if you like. So I can see that, explaining yourself.
Absolutely. Then to your question about the organisational values, all organisations do value certain things over certain other things. It might or might not match the list of words that's on the brass plaque in reception. That's a completely different conversation. But inside an organisation, there will be certain things that matter more than other things. And if you are able to talk with your team about what matters to the organisation and what matters to me as your manager here and how those two things connect, that can help the whole thing feel a lot more coherent. So one of their organisations I work with, they're a social care organisation. So they provide independent living support. And their number one value is kind hearts. And kind hearts is about the fact that We go into every interaction interested in the best outcomes for all people involved. We will move mountains if we can to make it happen. It's really clear that in that, every interaction is approached appreciatively. So if I'm that manager and I've got this workmanship craft on you, I need to say to my people, I like this data helps me, this helps me, that helps me, that helps me, because I want us to remain as trusted as we are, because being trusted in the way that we are gives us the opportunity to operate in that kind of way. We can make decisions. We can take the initiative. We can step forward when we can see it's the right thing to do. And by then actually helping the higher ups understand how we do that and trust us even further, imagine what we can do in the future. So it's those connections.
But so what you've just said, I think is, first of all, be explicit about what your values are, because even if people don't share those values, it will help them understand you and you will get better interactions.
Absolutely.
But then the other thing I've got from that is an organization might say it values innovation, but actions speak louder than words. And actually what it really values is hitting its bottom line. And if that means you've got to sack some people, will so be it. And so the stated value and the actual value of an organization may be two totally different things.
They often are, yes.
In my experience, organisational values that are put on a plaque in the foyer tend to be what they think they should have as values or what they would like to have rather than what they actually have, which is what you can observe by interactions, by behaviour, by how things get done around here. And I think it's important if you're leading a team and you've got this set on the wall and then you've got this difference to understand, because it's the disconnects between all of those that will cause people angst.
And that's really interesting, sorry, because I've worked for a number of organizations and there's only one I can think of where its stated values actually felt like it was what they were doing. They were congruent. But because if you have value, if you state something and it's not congruent, then that you just destroy trust because people say, oh yeah, we go again. Sorry, a penny drop moment. That's really interesting.
And so that organisation you worked in that actually was congruent, do you feel differently about having worked there compared to other places?
No, yeah, it was a much better organisation to work with. Because I suppose you just knew what was going to happen and you knew why it was going to happen and you could make sense of it.
And that's it. That's it. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like ambiguity. We're beautifully wired for it. Evolution has set us up marvelously to handle change and handle ambiguity because we're so long-lived. But we don't like it. The brain is a pattern-seeking machine. It wants to know what's coming up. It wants to be able to anticipate. And this is where values, be they your individual values or the team's shared values or the organization's values, really come into their own as a navigational aid in uncertainty. So we don't know what we're going to be asked to do next, but we do know that what's going to matter most is kind-heartedness, or what is going to matter most is innovation, or what is going to matter most is the bottom line. As long as we know, and then what happens next is consistent with that, we can handle all kinds of hiatus in the interim.
Yeah, the difficulty is though, and this is why I have some sympathy for organisations, is that there's a way of way things are done around here, so the unstated values. But if you're ambitious and you want things to change, one of the ways you think about changing them is make some statements that are ambitious, that are aspirational, that you're aiming for. I guess in that instance, I think, because you put them on the wall and you say this is what our values are, it's about maybe that's what your values should be or you're aspiring them to be. And rather than stating them as fact, I think there's a nuance there that will help people go with you because they know that's what you're aiming for, rather than stating it like, this is how we do things around here. And it's not, because the incongruence there will cause an issue.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for organisations if they're trying to do values work, because it's not easy.
No.
You're trying to take these abstract, emotionally rich, energy-laden ideas that sit in the unconscious where there is no vocabulary centres. All the vocabulary centres are forward here, they're not deep down there. So these feelings about things exist as feeling, as emotion, not as words. So to try and wrap words around them is hard to start with. So I've got a lot of sympathy with that. The thing is, you can like go for it. You can shoot for the moon and go, let's value this and this and this. But then you have to plan how you're going to do it. There will inevitably, at the start of a values program, be a big gap between where we're at and what we understand right now and what we've just put on the wall. So come up with a plan. Support people to get there steadily. And that requires a lot of reflection.
So if I'm running a team of 102 people, whatever the hell it might be, do I need to worry about values as a team? So I need to be explicit about my values as a manager so people can understand me. But do I need values for my team? Does that add anything or not? What is already just all so much corporate wallpaper?
It will, but only if you have the opportunity to do it properly. If you don't have the opportunity to do it properly, it will do more harm than good if you open Pandora's box. So leave values in the unconscious doing whatever they're doing, unless either you as a manager have got the autonomy to see something through, or your organisation is seriously committed to moving to consciously values-based work. If it is, or if you have got the autonomy, then good things will come from this. But if you are going to be compromised or undermined in any way, then save your sanity, work on your own values, be present, be your authentic best self. Fantastic. That will do you no harm, but don't shoulder a burden on behalf of the organisation is what I would advise.
So Jackie, it's a slightly different angle on that example though. So I get that if you've got James's example, you've got a team of 100 people trying to lay out the values for this team, could be a fool's errand in that example. But out of that 100 people, just for argument's sake, James, 6 of them report to you as an individual. Is there some value in not defining their values, but understanding the values of the individuals that work for you so you can understand them a bit better?
Not really, because just because you think you know what somebody's values are doesn't mean that you know very much about them, because there's so many different ways in which a value can play out. So you might, for example, look at a little group of people and go, what we really need is we need high trust. We'll have a trust value. But then all of a sudden it doesn't get you what you were looking for, because you can get the same behavior from different routes. So you can get trustworthy behavior from somebody who values loyalty. You can get trustworthy behavior from somebody who values efficiency, because actually keeping your promises and getting it right first time is the easiest way to be trusted. Or they may have a trust value. So it's not a set of straight lines.
No.
The state is for the manager is if you've got a relatively tight core team, so anything between 3 and 8 folk who have to work together closely on a regular basis. It could be really interesting to have a conversation about what does our best work look like? When are we really cooking on gas? When do we feel like we're on the same page? We've got one another's backs. We absolutely have faith in one another. What characterizes those interactions and those decisions? And then turn that into so what matters most to us is that we keep our promises. We ask for help when we need it. We are congratulated for doing a good job. We are supported to do a better job. I don't know, something like that. And turn that into a little kind of team charter that this is how we are going to guide our behavior when we are together and when we are separate from one another, but working on things that impact the group. So that can be really powerful as a touchstone.
Got you. I think what I was thinking was more, I don't know, in the earlier example, if James works for me and I keep asking him to post these videos and he never posts the videos, is there benefit in me understanding why James doesn't do that? So what's his individual values, so that I can understand a bit more about him, and therefore our relationship can develop and evolve as a result of me understanding James as well as me telling him what my values are.
Absolutely. Understanding that better. Absolutely. It doesn't need to get down to the level of values, though, to understand that.
No.
You can just sit with James and go, so I see that video posting task is one that is challenging for some reason to get done on time each month. Can we have a chat about that? I'd like to understand better what's in the way and what might be done to get those things out of the way or to make it a little bit easier. Could we just have a chat about it? What's the blocker? So not a sort of pejorative, I don't see why you can't do this on time. For pity's sake, it only takes 10 minutes. Not that, but I'm seeing a pattern here. Can we talk about this pattern? Because a different pattern would be more helpful both to you and to me. So can we talk about how we might make that happen?
Yeah. But equally not doing what I was suggesting to a degree, which is we've got to get into a deep and meaningful about everything.
No, because James may well not know. Because he hadn't just had this conversation about it. I don't like the self-aggrandizement feeling of this, but a feeling like that would be better. So if he doesn't have that awareness, because there's no reason why he should, to put him on the spot will actually make the situation worse, because we feel really bad when we can't answer questions like that. And
it feels really awkward because I'm trying to go all deep and meaningful about the fact that he won't post some videos and I don't know what you're going on about. And it's like my kids always take the piss out of me because they was like, every time we talk to Dad, it's a deep and meaningful chat with him. We don't want to always have a deep and meaningful. It's a similar sort of thing, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's really good advice, because you start talking about it and you think, I can't get the value, the importance of this. Therefore, I've got to do lots of stuff with it. When actually the reality is there are some things that you have said that are really useful that you would do in terms of understanding your own values and maybe articulating some of that. There might be some value in a team charter for the sake of a purpose, but actually trying to dive into it too much individually, or trying to make out like this is the values for this team, is probably too grand. You're reaching and you probably won't do it well, and you end up in a worse position.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a nice study that I read where there was an organisation, and TIPA researchers approached them and said, we want to do a study on values and individual values. And you seem to be an interesting organisation and you seem to be doing quite well. And you've got your values on the wall. And so we'd like to do this. And the organisation went, that's fine. And so then researchers did some individual values work with all of the people inside the organisation. And their hypothesis was, if we help all the people connect with their personal values, they will then love the organisational values even more, and performance will go up. It will be fantastic. So they did this work, and what happened was that the kind of 20% of the workforce that were already doing quite well, suddenly, like, they were turbocharged. They were flying. They were going, oh my God, I can see why I love it all so much. Pretty much everybody else, who were all just like vaguely dissatisfied about something or another, went, well, that's pants, isn't it? See that, see this, see the other, and their performance went through the floor. So you can actively disengage people if you stir up their values, but then give them no means to honour them in how they do their work.
Our podcast is all about helping people, teams and organisations perform better and enjoy work more.
And I go as far as saying that we believe that everyone and every team has the potential to transform their performance by optimising what they currently do.
So if you'd like to discuss how we can help you transform your performance, then get in touch, or maybe check out our website. We also do speaking events, mentoring and advice work as well.
I'm really interested in Jackie's. But what's the data say? So it's interesting to talk about values, but is there data that supports this or not?
There is. So values have been a topic of study in psychology for about 120 years. So it's a relatively young science. But what we are increasingly seeing is, with the advent of neuroimaging studies, that the things that have been observed in behavioral studies and experimental design are now showing up in terms of neuroimaging studies. So, for example, I say to you, values are emotionally rich, energy-laden ideas. And what brain scans show is that when people are talking about, thinking about values conflicts and values challenges, that it is the emotional centers of the brain that light up more so than the prefrontal cortex, kind of rational stuff. So those things that the early studies were suggesting about values are now being borne out by the neuroimaging studies. We also have seen in clinical studies that when people are connected to their values, they do some kind of values affirmation exercise. So it might be, I am this sort of person. These things matter to me. I stand for this. This is the flag that I fly. When people reconnect consciously with who they feel they are, if you then put them through a bunch of stress tests, like counting backwards from 293,420 in 13s in front of a hostile panel, that they produce less cortisol and less noradrenaline, which are stress chemicals, than people who did not do the values exercise. So this is interesting, because something that is just an exercise can have a physiological effect. So conscious connection to your values buffers us against physiological stress. Another thing that came out of my studies was that we looked at people's reported well-being. So how much do they feel that things in their life are worthwhile? How much are they satisfied with the way in which they live their life? And what we found was that there is a strong monotonic relationship between level of values connection and well-being. What that means is the stronger the values connection, the higher the well-being. And the values connection actually accounted for 28% of the difference in well-being. So people with high values connection were 28% higher in their reported well-being. And that's interesting, because there's not a drug or a therapist in sight. That's an internal process that is taking place there.
It's interesting because when you talk that, I was thinking about the tactical benefits of values, just as in this interaction or this understanding of this particular thing. Whereas what you're talking about in some of the data is more, it has, just by being in connection with my values, it has some general impacts, not just practical impacts.
Can I just go on that
Absolutely.
a wee bit more? So what you're saying there is you can see activity in the brain. You can link that to hormonal response and people's ability to count backwards in 13s, how much stress is there. So you can actually link it to individual performance. You can see it in well-being as well. Have there been any studies which actually demonstrate an improvement in organisational performance off the back of it or not? Because I suppose it gets progressively more and more difficult to prove the relationship.
I would say I am not aware of any good quality studies that can show that, which is not surprising when you think about the number of variables that would be involved. Because it's not just my individual values and our collective values, it's also my perception of the operating environment, it's the external conditions that we might be labouring under when we're trying to do that thing. So there's so many confounding variables, even something like that. I think we'd be on very dodgy ground to try and claim that. So my framing of it would be, if we want to try and do something to support the humans in our system to flourish and to be able to be the best human they can be, that's supporting them to get in contact with their values and express those values in their work, is a well-being promoting and a performance promoting thing to do. But this is one of the things that came out of the PhD. Conscious connection to values is not just knowing what they are. Just knowing what they are is not enough. You have to know what they are. You have to feel able to hold on to them, to honor them, especially in difficult times, and put them into practice. Know, hold, and live. If you can't do those two things, then it's not conscious connection to values. It's just values awareness. And that's not the thing that brings the benefits.
And so that comes back to quite almost like a good, bad, and ugly. But how organisations that you've seen that do this well, do this averagely, and do it dreadfully, what does that look like?
So doing it well means that the values that the organisation claims to prefer or prioritise above other things, it genuinely does. So it really uses them. It might not get it right every time, but it's genuinely trying to do it. But to do that, the values need to be richly described. Having a single list of words sitting there going integrity, trust, teamwork, innovation, and customer, that ain't going to cut it. That is so generic. It is not part of identity. Values are closely interwoven with identity. So the values need to be richly described. There's a great paper in the European Journal of Management looking at values and is there any value in articulating them? And they came out with this beautiful phrase where they said maverickism is good. The more distinctive your values in their name and their description, the better they are a description of who you actually are as an organisation, and the more practically people will be able to put them into practice. I need to know what it means, the rich idea. Don't just say integrity and then leave me to look it up in a dictionary. That's not going to cut it. So it's when it's good, it's richly described, and it can be put into practice. That means giving people time and space to reflect on what those ideas mean in practice in their particular part of the work. So it's not prescribing. This is not another to-do list. This is about providing a framework to guide how we do. It doesn't tell us what to do. It tells us how to go about the doing of it so that we've got agency in how we do it, but we do it within that framework. So that's what the good looks like.
But most organisations are just a bit mundane, bland, bad about it because it's just a list of words and it's a bit motherhood and apple pie. It doesn't mean anything when you're not getting any water.
Yeah, and the motivation for having those values on the wall in the first place can be very mixed. It might be that we need to have a set of values because our competitors got a set. That's a really bad reason. We need to have a set of values because the chairman's been on a golf course and he's come in and said he wants these to be the values. That's another bad thing to do. There's a host of bad things to do. Unfortunately, there's a lot of very bad advice on the internet, so be very careful what you believe when you're reading about values out there. The other reason, strangely enough, not to do it is to try and correct poor behaviour. So if there is a perception that, for example, people are not being very helpful inside the organisation, there's a lot of silo mentality, people aren't very cooperative, we want to change that, we'll have cooperation as our number one value. It doesn't work like that. You need to go to the root causes of why folk are not able to cooperate and are not able to play nicely. You have to do something about those. You can't just put a value on the top like a sticking plaster. That's a very bad thing to do as well.
We hope you're enjoying and getting value from listening to our podcast.
If you are, please can you share it online on social media with friends and colleagues?
We appreciate 5-star reviews, and we really do, but any feedback on how we can improve or subject that you'd like us to cover, just drop us a line and get in touch.
This all helps us bring the best quality show to you to ensure that you can improve your performance and enjoyment of work.
Is there anything organisations really do dreadfully where it just becomes counterproductive or destructive?
It's where the organisations actively dishonour the values and then refuse to be held to account to it. One of the famous ones, of course, is Enron, the accounting scandal that broke there, and the fact that their number one value was integrity, and yet they were busy shredding records and deceiving people left, right and centre. But then if you stand back from the idea of integrity if their version of integrity was do whatever it takes to protect ourselves, so our integrity in terms of our functioning, just keep everybody at arm's length, then actually a lot of their behavior was completely consistent with that version of that value.
So the one I would pick up at the moment, if you look at what's going on in the States, I imagine if you're working in the Department of Justice, you go into a job like that and you think it's all about integrity and following the law and, we see a whole host of dubious things going on. I imagine that working in that environment must really conflict with people's values, and they would just want the hell out. They must feel sick going into work in the morning.
Absolutely. It will be making people ill in there, for sure. And what tends to happen if we're put in a situation where it's really compromising one of our high priority core values, we will generally do one of a number of things, either become too ill to function, and so that gets us out of it, or we fight it. So whistleblowing, standing up to people, and that's hard, but we will do it if it matters that much. Or, and this one's really sad, I think, sometimes people park themselves up. They go, well, I clearly can't have it, but I need the salary and there's nowhere else for me to go. And as long as they don't make me break the law, I will toe the line, but as slowly as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And that's soul destroying, literally.
But back on a slightly more cheery note, your view seems to be that organisationally have the right motivation for defining your values, define them in the right way and richly describe them, not just single words.
Yeah.
And then back to what you're saying, have a plan for, if that's not how you're all behaving now, don't let that misalignment bubble away. Be clear about the aspiration, have a plan to help move the organisation in that direction. If you can't do it well, I think you might as well not do it. It could almost be more destructive to do it badly than don't think of it a tick box. Either do it well or don't do it at all.
Absolutely. Some work by Kuzners and Posner a while ago now showed that where organisations do work that enables people to connect their personal values and live their personal values out through work, increases discretionary effort by 17%. And they said, and then if the organisation has meaningful values and people can connect their personal values to the organisational values, that lifts it by another 2%, goes up by 19%. If, however, what the organisation does is have a set of values which it pushes at people, and doesn't provide the opportunity for people to connect themselves through their values to the organisation, then discretionary effort goes down by 0.2%. 0.2% is not a big down, but the point is it does disengage.
Yeah.
It measurably disengages.
So, Jackie, what would be your advice to an individual manager?
If you're an individual manager and you're listening to us and you're thinking, so what do I do? Here's the first thing that you do. First thing is give yourself a pat on the back, because you've got a cracking set of values, whether you can name them or not. You've got a cracking set of values which have done a great job of getting you to where you are. They've been behind the decisions that you've made and the problems that you've solved and the relationships you've created. So good job, you. Fantastic. You don't have to do anything else if you don't want to, because your values will just keep putting in good service. All of your values are there to help. So this is great. If you think, though, well, this is quite interesting, could be interested in taking this a bit further, start with yourself. Get in touch with what matters most to you. So you might try journaling, you might try a reflexive exercise. There are values profiling tools out there on the internet. Some are not particularly great, some are better than others. There's some information about them on my website if you wanted to look at that, magmaeffect.com. But there's a number of things out there that you could try. And having done a little bit of work to surface your own values, then just see how you go with it. See if it helps. Because it might be that actually it's all tickety-boo for you anyway, which would be great. But you also might find that you start going, oh, okay, that's why that kind of problem I find more draining than this kind of a problem. Or that's why that relationship feels just like a knife through butter. That's just glorious doing that work with those people. But this hasn't been felt the same. So maybe I can bring some of what I can see over there through my values lens into this other situation and see if that can actually generate more of the kind of vibe that's good for me and good for the people that I'm working with. So work on yourself first. If that feels good and works for you, then think about having that conversation with your direct reports. Or if you're a member of a peer group of managers, maybe with your peers, talking with your peers about values. But keep it really simple. What matters most? What are the big ideas that really make our hearts sing? What's inside our best work? What do we want more of? Let's figure out how to have more of what makes our hearts sing in the work that we do.
Super. Thank you very much. I have to admit, this is a bit like the presentation you gave to me. I feel like I'm drinking from the fire hose, as they say, but I will go back and I will re-listen to it. It was great. Thank you very much, Jack.
Fantastic advice. And I love the fact that often people just say you've got to do more and more of this, whereas actually you're saying, like, do it well or don't do it. I think that's a really interesting insights. Thank you for sharing your expertise, Dr. Values.
You're very welcome. It has been a joy.
Thank you very much.
We cover a whole host of topics on this podcast,
From purpose to corporate jargon.
but always focused on one thing: getting the job done well.
Easier said than done. So if you've got unhappy customers or employees, bosses or regulators breathing down your neck,
If your backlogs are out of control and your costs are spiralling, and that big IT transformation project that you've been promised just keeps failing to deliver,
we can help. If you need to improve your performance, your team's performance, or your organisation's, get in touch at jimmy@ajobdonewell.com.
or James@jobdonewell.com.